to the center of the most magnificent campus in the whole world. You understand all of a sudden a new vision of what a campus can be. The splendor and the excitement that surrounds us representing New York also surrounds and represents the excitement of this institution. New York University, in the heart of New York City. The learning environment and the learning experience goes on outside class, and it goes on outside residence halls. It goes on in the community in which the university exists. Not simply the notion of an institution located in a cornfield, but the notion of a major campus surrounding your own campus. It doesn't have to be education, stop, life begins. It could be an opportunity for an education which incorporates the notion of what one's life is going to be, even as your educational experience is taking place. Street fairs are emblematic of an enormously exciting ethnic diversity that surrounds New York University. The ethnic diversity of the village is a reflection of the waves of immigration which have come to this world seeking opportunities from the earliest times of history of the Republic. And you will see it in the restaurants, you will see it in the cultural institutions, you'll see it in the churches, you'll see it reflected in the traditional street fairs that populate our life every spring and every fall.
Don't come and charge, folks. Live rhythm and blues upstairs. Come on up, guys. Don't come and charge now.
The village has more jazz clubs than any place on the face of the earth. Every type of music and theater, musical theater, satire, and comedy. Oh, all the famous comedy people in the movies. Well, Bill Cosby, Jackie Mason, Richard Pryor. Dustin Hoffman was a waiter here for a couple of years. He was fired by my manager because he was paying more attention to the artist on stage than he was to the customers. But I think it was fortunate because very shortly thereafter he moved across the street to an acting part that launched him at Circle in the Square. So I feel responsible for Dustin Hoffman's career, because had he not been fired, who knows where he'd be today. Probably still working in some joint. For the past 5 years, we have a jam session with the NYU jazz program. It gives the players, those taking courses at NYU, an opportunity to play in front of an audience. So it's not boastful to say that the Village Gate and the other places in the village have had an enormous influence on the culture.
It's hard to think of major 19th century literary life without thinking of the village. I think basically the city moved north and left the village behind. So there are these lovely places that were not quite fashionable anymore, and where the rents were cheap and the writers flocked to the village.
What do you think it is about the village over the years that seems, you say, cheap housing probably makes the attraction, but there's something else that goes into the heart of the matter?
Well, for James, of course, who was the quintessential native villager, having been born around the corner here in Washington Place, it was Edenic. It was the lost paradise. Poe wandered around, lived in many places. Isn't he former resident of one of the fraternity houses on West Street? Yes. Melville was here for a while, and one could see him walking down from here to Wall Street, for instance, and getting the idea for the story of Bartleby the Scrivener. Probably, I've always imagined he must have walked down there on a Sunday, on a gloomy Sunday afternoon. He said there's such a dark, dismal, dreary kind of tone in that story, profound story.
If you're at NYU, you're 10 steps from the heart of the world of New York painting.
You mentioned that you came to the village some 30 years ago. You told me that you packed your bags and said, I'm going to New York and paint. Why did you come to Greenwich Village to do that?
The basic reason was that everything was here. Not only the museums, really, the real reason that I came were the galleries. The galleries in New York showed the best art all the time. I mean, you could see what de Kooning did, what Pollock did, what Rothko did, and you could see it for free immediately. So that if you were interested in painting, the best painting was handed to you sort of on a silver platter. This is a little bit like the number of incidents or visual incidents here is something like what you might encounter just walking along the street. A lot of different things happen. Your eyes catch a lot of different kinds of things. You don't actually focus on everything at the same time, but a lot of things enter your field of vision and exit, in fact, quite quickly.
What are your favorite places on Broadway?
There's some great record stores in the Village, like Sun Records and stuff, where you can get stuff a lot cheaper than you can at Tower Records. So it's great to like look for stuff that's unusual in here, but then you can go down to the Village and you can find some really cool stuff.
You know what else is good? Is, what's that? The place right on the corner of West 4th and Mercer. Dojo. And that's the new one.
love
But the
that.
old dojo is on St. Mark's. And that's excellent. That's really good.
I'd
It's
rather,
great.
go,
They have good
I'd rather go over to St. Mark's and get a big slice of greasy pizza.
That's good too.
Very good
They're all
pizza.
places.
When I first moved to the Village years ago, I remember it made my heart beat faster. I was a kid from North Carolina. I had never seen anything like this before. And I used to just prowl endlessly around these streets. It was a thrill, really a thrill. And I still get a little of that every now and then when I'm taking a walk in this neighborhood. I like the feeling of the place. I like the crooked streets and the quaint shops and the relatively inexpensive restaurants.
What is there about Greenwich Village that makes it home?
I don't know. I have a prejudice in favor of small towns. I've spent most of my life in rural places and small towns, and I realize that that's really what Greenwich Village is. Nobody can live in New York City, you know. It's way too big a place and way too tough a proposition. So people live in their neighborhoods. Hi.
Good morning.
Oh, thanks. There's the Irish delicatessen on the corner that cashes my checks, and the guy at the liquor store who takes my packages when I'm away, and the neighbors in the block. It's a place where a human being can actually live, you know. It just occurs to me that I didn't learn anything much outside of class in a small college town. In this school, there's a great education right out here on the streets of the Village.